Hi friends, I'm Mari Andrew, writer, illustrator, felt obsessed person, and author of How to Be a Living Thing. As a little gift, I wanted to share something that has brought me so much delight over the past couple of years, needle felting. It started very similarly to the way that I started my illustration project. Back in 2015, my father had just died. I was in a period of very dense grief. And in order to kind of hoist myself back up to feeling more like myself, feeling more grounded in the world, I started illustrating. And I decided to do one illustration a day for a year. And it ended up lasting about 10 years. I enjoyed it so much. And I found that creativity was such a grounding way to connect back to myself on those days that I felt like I was sinking. It's kind of the same deal with needle felting. I was coming in on the anniversary of my stepfather's death, which was around Christmas. And as though all those twinkle lights and decorations weren't depressing enough, I felt like I had to make the most of this holiday season and first holiday season without him. I was talking to my therapist about it, and she gave me some interesting advice. She suggested that I start a new craft, a new art form. And because I make art for a living at this point, when I think of art, I think of work. And I thought, I don't want to do more work. So I tried to find a craft that was totally different from anything that I'd ever done. I Googled Thanksgiving crafts for adults, and I found a needle felted turkey project. I thought, okay, I can do that. So I ordered this kit. I made a turkey. It was so fun. I loved every minute of it. And it did help me kind of lean into the wackier side of the holiday rather than taking it so seriously. So it felt like one of the best gifts that I can give you too. I wanted to teach you needle felting so you could experience the same healing magic that I did, or just have more fun in your life. Today, I'm going to show you how to make two woolly projects, a little felted dog and landscape style felt painting. Think of it as cozy visual storytelling you can do with your hands. It's accessible, it's soothing, and it's honestly a lot more rewarding than getting stuck in a social media doom scroll. Before I show you how to make these felted creatures, I wanted to share how I first learned. So I'm mostly self-taught, if you can call it that. I got the turkey making kit from online, and I basically taught myself with the instructions they provided. I taught myself how to do the felt painting, so it's really such a DIY operation. There are no rules, but I did take a 1-hour class with a woman named Yukako Satone, who works at Loop of the Loom, which is my local craft studio in Brooklyn. As she says, you will find the true nature of humans in your creation, which was woven without being forced by anyone or any technique. I loved her philosophy, and she made it really simple for me that this is just to bring yourself joy. It's just to bring yourself connection. It's not necessarily to impress anyone, although it's pretty impressive. So she taught me how to make a dog, and we started with pipe cleaners to make the shape of a dog. You can always give it a shorter leg. And then we wrapped the wool around and started needle felting from there. This is a really great technique if you want some structure to your creature or you want to make it move, it bends, that's fun. But I actually much prefer just freestyling. The pipe cleaner is a great structure, it's a great idea, and if that helps you, go nuts. I just much prefer making the shapes myself. That's just more pleasurable for me with my hands, but you do you. If you want to use pipe cleaners, be my guest. They can be really great. They're also really nice for little bird feet if you ever want to add those to your birds. I also always have a little pair of scissors nearby just to snip any loose ends. The needles come in a few different sizes. This is the difference between size 38 and size 36 needle. I'm sure you can barely tell, but the size 38 is just a little sturdier, and that's good for the creatures. And when you want to really get into your wool, this is your needle. The 36 is a lot finer, and so it's good for those little details like eyes and ears and tiny things. I use a wool felting pad. This is the surface of your project. I really love the texture of wool, but there are tons of other options. Foam, brush mats, whatever works for your fingers. It's good to try out a few different ones before you invest in anything fancy. I think they go up to $20. You want to make sure that you're finding something that really works for your particular constitution, your anatomy, your fingers as you set up. I also really like the wool ones because you can stick your needles in them. This is the finger protector. This must be for a baby because it barely fits on my finger, but in theory, you would put it over your finger and it protects it from the needle. Here's an example of synthetic wool. It's a lot tougher than the natural wool. It's stiffer. So it's actually pretty good for when you want to make the felted creatures, which need a lot of that stiff wool so they can get their body shape. But I just prefer the squishiness of the natural. It just feels a lot better in my hands. It's softer, it's more malleable, you can manipulate it a little better. Although this one does match my nails, which is a huge plus. So this is the type of needle felting that I started with. These are little felt creatures, and they're pretty easy to do because it's really just making the body and then having fun with the little details. And I think the more quirkiness they have, the less perfection they have, the better. Okay, so my very first project was making a dog, and I made it with the pipe cleaner method, but I actually think freestyling is a lot easier. So we have this lovely big ball of wool. This is so nice. Love having all of this quantity to work with. This is white, so we'll make a little white dog with spots. First thing we're gonna do is make the body, and that's the most fun part, I think. You roll it up really tight in a little oval. Never has to be perfect. Like this. You can put it down on your felting board and just start. I always tell people that the key to felting is to think about something that annoys you, something that you're upset about, and just go to town. That's really what you do. You just channel whatever you're feeling into a million little harmless stabs. So I'm just trying to get this into a thick oval shape for the body of the dog. This is where we'll attach the head and the legs and the tail. And what I do is I start lengthwise and work on making it into this kind of little hot dog. And then I make sure to balance that by needle felting the top and the bottom so that it takes a shape. So I hold it in my fist like this. I don't think this is an official technique, but it's what works for me, and I find it really satisfying. I'm stabbing myself a couple times. If you want to make it bigger, you would wrap more wool around it and just make it a little fatter in the middle. Give it some nice little body shape, very cute. If you want to make it smaller, you would not put on more wool. You would just keep poking until it got into a thinner shape. It's looking pretty good. I prefer to make the top or the bottom a little flat to hold the head nicely. So I'm actually going to make a little slope here for the head, kind of like a little nest where a dog's head would naturally go. Okay, so making the head is pretty much the same process. It's just making it into a ball rather than an oval. So I've got my perfect amount of wool here. Looks like a little cotton ball. I'll start the same process where I'm just trying to get it to be a ball shape and a little bit smaller than this. So you just poke, poke, poke all around. Okay, this is looking like enough of a little ball for the head. No dog's head is perfectly round, and your needle felting dog doesn't have to be either. In order to give it a more round shape though, you can roll it in your hands. This is another way to help your wool take shape. It's just by rolling it. This is such a meditative and calming craft. I really feel my nervous system just settle as soon as I start. It's all about the hands. It's all about how the wool feels in your hands. It's really soothing after a tough day or just a normal day. Now I'm going to give the dog's head a little more shape with a muzzle. So this might be a little too much wool, but we'll see. You can always make it like a pit bull with a thick muzzle. I'm going to use my felt base to just give it a little shape here. And I'm literally just putting the ball of wool directly onto the base. And I'm just going to poke it into a sort of muzzle shape, which is kind of like a dome, I guess. So this is how I create shapes, is to take the wool, flatten it as much as I need to, and then poke it into the base, which steadies it. When I pull that up, it's a little tough to pull because it's actually getting felted into the felt, but that's okay. If there's all this stray wool underneath, I can always poke that into shape if I want. But this is actually really useful for putting on the dog's head because you always want a little bit of raw wool, not felted, in order to stick onto something else. So we kind of have this dome, again, not perfect. We will shape it a little more once we put it on the head. So I'm going to do just what I did into the base, where I attach the shape into the head by poking the sides and kind of tightening up this little circle shape that I made. I'm only poking the sides of the muzzle so that the dome doesn't deflate and we don't have a muzzle anymore. And you just kind of poke on the sides. If you need a little more wool to secure it, you can wrap it around. And see, it kind of acts as this binding between the head and the muzzle. It's like a little wool glue. All right, so now I have to attach the body to the head. How are we going to do that? More wool, of course. So I'm just going to take a little tuft from my big wool supply. And what I'm going to do first is just flatten it with my hands. I don't want it too stuck together, because it has to serve as kind of that glue for the head and the body. So it's going to look like this, like a little Queen Elizabeth collar. And you can put it right on the base. And then you just start connecting it from the head to the body. So some parts are going to go up and some parts are going to go down, like this. Once I felted all around the neck area, I can also start attaching it by just poking the head into the body like this. You can see that my needle is going in diagonally from the head to the body, and that will just secure it a little bit better. Okay, we're in pretty good shape here. It's kind of looking like a little Snoopy at this point. Got this long muzzle and kind of droopy head, but I think it looks pretty cute. So now we will attach the ears and a tongue, these little parts that can be a little bit tricky, but the point is to not put too much pressure on them. You can always refine them later. Because we have kind of a Snoopy shape going, I'm going to give him black ears. I would start by making the shape on your base and then transferring it and doing the rest of the details once you attach it. So I'm going to make them in the shape of these floppy ears right onto the base. Doing the same method that I did with the muzzle. It will get a little bit stuck to the base, but that is just fine. What you can do when you pull it off and it kind of loses its shape a little is just turn it over and do the exact same thing. As you can see, I'm leaving a little bit of wool at the top. That's to attach it to the head. So just like we did with the body and the head, I'm going to have a little tuft of wool to connect them. That's kind of our wool glue. If your ear is coming out a little gnarly like this, there's some little extra tufts of wool that you did not welcome in, you can refine it. And I would use the size 36 needle for this. That's that smaller one, skinnier. It's a little better for doing these very precise details. And I hold it between my fingers, which is a bit precarious. I'm doing lighter pokes so I don't hurt myself. And with the thinner needle, it's easier for the smaller pokes to be more effective. So, since I have black ears and a white body, I'm just gonna put a little bit of white over the black extra that we have, so it'll be super secure when I bind it. I have the white wool over the black wool. That's gonna camouflage it fine. And we just start putting it into the head like this. All right, putting on my other ear with the same method. This time, because the other side was a little thin, I'm gonna make this tuft a little thicker so that it camouflages the excess black wool a little better. I'm gonna add another tuft to the top, not only to camouflage the excess black, but also to make the head just a little bit rounder and cuter. If you wanna make your felt creature look extra cute, give it a big head and big eyes. That's the key. To make the leg, I'm gonna go back to my base, just as I did for the ears and the muzzle. And again, I'm making that kind of hot dog shape, except this is a lot smaller and it's gonna be a little longer. So I'm just trying to roll my wool into this long shape. You're just gonna keep rolling it toward you and poking it into shape. How accurate you make these legs has a lot to do with how patient you are, and I'm not very patient. As you can see, I'm leaving quite a bit of wool at the top. That's what's going to affix my leg to the body. And just as I did with the body and head, I'm gonna make my fist and poke it a little at the top. Poke it just softly so it gets that nice round foot shape. If you want it to look more like a foot, you can actually bend the leg and poke it into a J shape. What you can do once you have kind of a foot shape is to hold it in your fingers and poke it even more. So poke it right into that heel area and it should stay. You can poke a crease also into this foot. There. Now you have more of a little foot. You have all this nice excess wool at the top. And so you put it into the body where you want it. Spread out the wool at the top. Stick it on and it'll look like a whole lot of wool at first, but all of this is so useful for our wool gluing onto the body. So this is pretty fun. You just start poking into the body and you can do just what you did with the head and the body where you actually poke into the leg to make sure it's really in there and there. Now you have a leg affixed to your wool dog. Tip, if the legs come out a little too long, you can always make him seated. It's an easy trick. Okay, I made this tail shape earlier. It's just like a little cone. And I'll put it on his back like this. Same method as the legs. Okay, we have a workable dog shape. Now is the fun part, making his face. I pulled out a little bit of black wool. And to make the eye, I'm just going to rub it in my hands until it becomes a little ball. I have this little ball in my hands, but it's actually a little bit too big. This is where my tiny scissors comes in handy. This is the very risk-taking part of the needle felting if you're up for an adventure. So I'm gonna put the eye where I want it to be. It looks cuter, I've found, when the eyes are closer to the muzzle. That gives it a kind of puppy look. And the reason why this is so risky is that you can easily poke the eye right into the head. I've done that many times. It helps if you poke once in the middle and then once outside the eye. I make the mistake of poking right in the middle and then it just goes into the head. It's like the eye is swallowed by the head. Trying to get the eye to be a little smaller. So I'm poking at the sides in the same way that I did the muzzle, kind of shaping it on the head itself. Okay, rolling the second eye. I'm gonna put it low on the head as well, right by the muzzle. I think this is a better size. I think the other one was a little too big to start. But you don't know until you do it. You don't know that you're making a mistake until you're making a mistake. Such is life. I'm gonna use a little bigger of a ball for the nose. Still gonna roll it. The nice thing about a dog nose, especially a kind of Snoopy nose, is that it's supposed to stick out a little, which makes it easier. I'm gonna cut this as well. Okay, put it right at the top of his muzzle and start going to town poking. I'm gonna give him a mouth as well. This is how he differs from Snoopy. Not gonna get sued today. So to make these lines in his face, I'm gonna twist a very small amount of wool. And I'm gonna put it right under his nose. And again, just start poking it into shape. Okay, so we have our Snoopy looking figure now. If you want to add a collar or spots, you're just going to poke that color directly into the body. So let's make a spot just for fun. He's going to have a little brown spot. Just going to put this into a ball. I'm going to roll it in my hands. I'm pinching it to get it thin. That'll make it easier for me to just put it directly on his body. And you don't need any excess wool to put this on because it's so thin and small. It's not like attaching the head to the body. It's just attaching a bit of extra wool. And then we have a little spot. It's for some extra character. I'll give him a collar as well. This is just a wisp of felt. Can put it around his neck and just poke that in. For a finishing touch, you can put on a little pink tongue. So cute. I want just a tiny bit of wool for this. So tiny it's not even ripping. So I'm gonna cut it. I'll roll it in my hands, but I also want it a little flat because it's a tongue. And I'm just gonna put it on him the way I put on the spot and the collar, just by poking. There we go. Ta-da! So this is our finished dog. This is the best present you can ever give to a dog person who adores their dog. The custom felted pet dog. Amazing. What's a better present than that? For your second project, we'll be doing something that I call a felt painting. I don't know what it's actually called, but doesn't it seem like it would be called a felt painting, kind of painting, but using felt? That's how I refer to it. And this is actually my favorite type of needle felting. What I love about felt painting is that you can go crazy with the textures. This orca is a pretty good example of that. You can see that I made these waves really thick and fluffy, feels really good to touch, and that I made some parts a little thinner. It adds a lot of dimension, but more than that, it's just really fun to touch. Today, I will be making an animal that's a little more elegant. I'm going to create a snow leopard. This is a beautiful, mysterious, ghostly animal that very few people have seen, that I researched for my book when I was working through what's an animal that can teach us humans about how to go through transitions. I have moved over 20 times in the past not that many years, and I had to move again. They were selling my apartment building and I had to move on very short notice. And I thought, I'm so sick of moving. I'm so sick of the disruption. It's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. It's so much work. And I was trying to look for an animal who moves a lot. A lot of animals do migrate, but the snow leopard actually doesn't migrate. They just wander all the time. And I found that really inspiring. I thought, I'm kind of like a snow leopard. All I do is move. And for all of human history, we've been on the move too. We are a species in perpetual movement. That's what we've adapted for. That's what we've developed communities for. And so I saw that my constant transitioning, my constant movement wasn't a bad thing. It's actually something that I'm very much adapted for, just like snow leopards. I find felt painting a lot easier than making the little critters because it's just putting shapes directly on wool. There's no making of a whole body. There's no affixing a head to a torso. It's pretty straightforward, as you'll see. It might look a little more complicated, but it's a little easier. So I'm gonna start with the head, just like I did for the dog, but I just need to flatten it a little. I don't need to make it into a shape. I'll do that directly on the wool. Ideally, I'd want it in some kind of circle because it's a head, but it doesn't matter what the shape is going in because a lot of the shaping you'll just do directly on the felt. So I just put my ball of wool down and I'm gonna make it into a circle shape. What's really nice about felt painting is that I can shape it as I go and I can very easily correct mistakes. Making mistakes in felting is just like making mistakes in life. You acknowledge it, you reshape it, and you move on. Or you make it part of the story. To flatten this head, I'm just gonna poke it a bunch, but I don't want it completely flat. I think these felt paintings are a lot more interesting when there's a lot of different heights and textures going on. So this will be relatively flat compared to the rest of the painting, but I don't want it to be like a total pancake. Wasn't that easier than making a dog head? And now I'm gonna make the ears, which is also a lot easier on the felt itself than free form. Just put them into little balls, put them directly on the felt and go to town. I'm using a thinner needle for this because I just want it to be a precise shape. And the thinner needles help you get into those nooks and crannies that can make it really nice and precise. You can pull the wool easily with them. Get rid of those little stragglers, stray wool hairs. I'm usually looking at a picture when I'm doing this because I need some kind of guidance. I don't have one with me, so I'm just gonna hope from memory that this is what a snow leopard's ears look like. And that's really it. That's what felt painting is. It's just taking the wool, putting it on the felt, poking it into whatever shape you want. So this is one I've been working on already. It's the snow leopard's body without a tail. We'll work on that. And I just gave him some green to start, but we'll have more fun with the colors in a minute. Right now he looks very much like a bear, which is what my dog looked like before I made him dog-like, which leads me to believe that every needle felt project looks like a bear at first. So just like my dog, I'm making this tail into a tail shape before I put it on the felt, but I can reshape it very easily once it's actually on the felt. Snow leopards have very long tails, I guess so they can jump really high. It's actually kind of odd looking. It's like huge tails and a tiny cat. One of the ways that snow leopards adapted for a life of transition and movement is that their tails are really long and really fluffy. So they use it as a portable sleeping bag, kind of cuddle up with their tails up there in the Himalayan mountains, which sounds really cute. I was going to poke the top of the tail down so that it would match the rest of the body, but I like how it's a little more three-dimensional up here. I can create more volume by pinching it upwards and just by not poking it down. Then it'll retain its fluffy shape. Since needle felting already looks like a pretty folksy style, we can really have fun with it. I'm going to give my snow leopard some lavender spots. I don't think that's what they look like in the wild. although very few people have seen them because they're such amazing hiders and camouflagers. I'm going to give him green eyes, whether or not that's realistic. If you know me, there's a good chance you've gotten one of these felt paintings as a gift. It's one of the only handmade things that I can make. After the loss of my stepfather, which inspired this project, I was trying to think of a gift to give to my mom, and she buried his ashes in Central Park, which is his favorite place in the world. So I made a felt painting of the place in Central Park where we buried him under a tree. And it's a very happy scene. It looks really joyful. It looks really folksy, just like all needle felted pieces. The part I like the most about felt paintings is really playing with the texture. So we're gonna go a little crazy as we give him a background. I love making suns really thick and chubby. I think they're so cute. There, a fuzzy sun. And I love going nuts with the color in the landscapes because, again, who cares if it's realistic or not? Let's give him pink mountains. I love making mountains in these felt paintings because they can be really wild shapes, wild textures, wild colors, doesn't matter. Everyone can generally tell that it's a mountain or at least part of the landscape, so it doesn't matter what colors you use. And I like making them really thick and fluffy. This is such a serious and beautiful creature. I saw this amazing documentary about snow leopards. I think it's called The Velvet Queen. And they're just so elegant and so beautiful, so mysterious. And I really kind of made him look like a clown here. But, you know, I'm bringing out his more playful side. I'm showing people that snow leopards can have fun too. Needle felting and really making any kind of art really helps honor all the emotions that come up while we are creating. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so healing, because any emotion that comes up is welcome in this space. You're by yourself, you're with yourself, you're keeping yourself company, and anything that you think or feel is fine. It belongs here. Okay, so now we have a snow leopard galloping through these Dr. Seuss whimsical colored mountains. He could use some more spots and I'll probably add to the sky later, but this will give you an idea of how to make a felt painting. It's not complicated. It's actually quite simple. Really, really enjoyable to do. The more intricate it gets, obviously, the longer it takes. A lot of the ones that I've made for my art show, for some more complex gifts, have taken upwards of 20 hours. So give yourself time. I just do it when I'm watching TV in the evenings and work on it a little at a time, which is actually so gratifying. It's really nice to see how just putting in a little bit of time every day can make something quite complex and interesting. And at the end, if you're like me, you might get just addicted to putting on more and more and more details. So it can take a very long time to do. It can also take not a long time. This one was not long to make. It was very simple, kind of childlike. And again, that's what I love about this craft. You can make it look a lot more complex and interesting and complicated and impressive. You can layer different colors of wool to actually make different shades. If you want to combine two colors and make your own shade of wool, You just take 2 pieces of wool of different colors and rip them up like so. If you rip them for a very long time, if you have a very long episode of a TV show to watch, you just do this the entire time. It will be a seamless color. It'll be really pretty, but it's kind of cool when you don't mix them all the way, because then you can have these different shades of different wool. And I think this looks like a sunset, maybe a sorbet. See, now it's mixed. But you can do that directly on the felt too. It's very cool. It's a very malleable craft. It really lends itself to making mistakes. It really lends itself to being creative and trying new things. If you do make a mistake that you completely want to redo, it's as easy as pulling the wool off the felt and trying again. This is a craft that has really helped me learn how to accept mistakes, make mistakes freely, and actually use them to my advantage. As sometimes I think, oh, that came out differently than I thought, but it's actually really cool, or that's a shape I haven't made before. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was really fun for me to do. I hope that it was fun for you to watch. And I hope you got inspired to make your own felt creatures or your own felt paintings. I hope that it made this craft seem accessible and doable for you, because it is accessible, it is doable. And with some practice, with some trial and error, with a lot of mistakes making, you will blow me away with whatever you create. And I can't wait to see it. Welcome to the start of your needle felting journey. I hope that it is as wonderful for you as it has been for me.